In our next section, we're going to look at the ASA as the EasyVPN server and the iOS as the EasyVPN client, both running in client mode and in network extension mode. Now, we already have ASA2 configured as the server. The VPN client connection is going to be coming in from router 3, ultimately to encrypt traffic that is coming from the 172.16 network, going to the 10 network behind the ASA. The ASA's command line, if we look at the show run crypto, the show run tunnel group, and the show run group policy, this is going to show us the full combination of the EasyVPN server configuration. Where again, just like any VPN tunnel, we have our basic phase 1 parameters, which is the authentication, the encryption, the hashing, and the Diffie-Hellman group. We then have the phase 1.5 parameters, which are defined by both the tunnel group and the group policy, where the tunnel group is going to define what's the username and password. Then what is the group policy that is being called, which determines what is the split tunneling ACL, what is the WIN server, what is the DNS server, any of the other options that are assigned during the mode configuration. Then we have the rest of our phase 2 options, which are the IPsec transform set, which is then called from the dynamic crypto map. The dynamic crypto map is called from the static crypto map, which is lastly applied on the interface along with ISACAP. Now, currently we have the VPN server listening for any connections, which we can see is the same configuration that we're using to connect from the software client. So next, let's take a look at router 3's configuration, who is the VPN client. And this is going to be the same configuration as we were going from the iOS VPN client to the iOS VPN server. Where first we need to know what are the inside and the outside interfaces. In this particular case, the inside interface is fast Ethernet 0/1. The outside interface is serial 1/0.23. And we're going to be encrypting traffic from the inside as it is going to the ASA. Next, we need to define the client configuration. So we say crypto IPsec client. Then whatever the name of this configuration, we'll say client 1. The most important portion here is what is the group username and password, where the ASA defined the group username as test group. The password or the pre-shared key, in this case is Cisco, and then also what is the peer's address. This is going to be the outside interface of the ASA. So 200.0.122.12. We would then define, do we want to automatically connect or do we want to manually connect? Here I'll say we'll do a manual connection. Then what is the mode that we're going to run in? Are we in client, network extension, or network plus? First, we're going to look at the client mode. Then we have our interfaces, where fast Ethernet 0/1 is the inside, and the serial interface, that is the outside. If we were to go to the ASA and look at the debug crypto ISACAP, when we initiate the connection from router 3, if we say crypto IPsec client EasyVPN connect, we should see on the ASA that phase 1 negotiation occurs. If the router then sees the output to do extended authentication, this would then mean they have agreed on the phase 1 ISACAP parameters, and we're now going into the phase 1.5 for mode configuration and extended authentication. So next we authenticate with the individual username and password. We should now see that the rest of the tunnel negotiates and that the server is going to assign an address. It says the client was assigned 192.168.0.1. Router 3 should then assign this to a loopback, and we're then using this for NAT translation. We see the NAT virtual interface changes to up. Now from anyone who is behind the client. Let's say, for example, router 4. If we were to send traffic over the tunnel and to someone behind the server, let's say router 6, what we should see is that the connection is going to come from the VPN tunnel's address. If we tell that into router 6 and look at the show users, we see this is coming from the tunnel address that the ASA was assigning down to the client. So the key point of this configuration is that it is no different from the client's point of view, whether we are using the iOS as the server or whether we're using the ASA as the server. The only real difference is that on the server's configuration, we can do different types of bindings like the ISACAM profiles on the iOS, where we're using the tunnel groups and the group policies on the ASA. But from a protocol negotiation point of view and from an actual transport point of view, they're going to be the identical result, whether we're using the ASA or whether we're using iOS. If we were to now go to router 3, who again is the client, let's disconnect this. We'll say clear crypto IPsec client. And I'm then going to change the mode. Let's show run section crypto. I'm going to change the mode from client to network extension. So now we're running a network extension mode. I'll reinitiate the tunnel. So we say crypto IPsec client EasyVPN connect. We should then get our prompt for extended authentication, which we do. If we now connect from router 4 to 6, we can see router 6 is not responding. So before we go any further with our troubleshooting on router 4, what I'm going to do is send packets towards 6. And we'll do these with ICMP ping. So we'll ping 10.0.66 and set a high repeat count. If we then go to router 6 and look at the debug IP ICMP, so now in router 3, if we look at the change in our configuration, let's say show run section crypto, the only thing that's changed here is that we have changed from client mode to network extension mode. If we then go to connect the tunnel, we'll say crypto crypto IPsec client, EasyVPN Connect. We should see the option for the extended authentication, which we do. Username is Cisco, password is Cisco. But now it says the connection was terminated. So for some reason, and assuming that this is not a username and password authentication problem, but for some option that is now changed from the client talking to the server, it's not accepting our network extension mode request. So before looking at anything else in our configuration, let's look at the debug on the ASA, and let's look at the debug crypto ASA camp. Then on router 3, let's reinitiate the connection. So crypto IPsec client, EasyVPN Connect. Then we have our extended authentication, and it says the connection is terminated. So let's look at the ASA's debug. And I may not be logging at the correct level. Let's say logging console 7. So logging console 7, and we know that logging is on. If we show debug, we're debugging IPsec and we're debugging ISACAP. So now let's reestablish the tunnel. Crypto IPsec client, EasyVPN Connect. We should then get our extended authentication request, which we do. Username is Cisco, password is Cisco. And then again, it says the connection is terminated. So now on the ASA, let's look at what is the particular reason that it's getting rejected. And let's turn logging off, so no logging console. Now, based on the fact that I did get the request for extended authentication, this should tell us that at a minimum, the phase 1 negotiation was correct. So if we start at the top, it says we're trying to start the tunnel. Tunnel is coming from router 3. We should get to the portion where it says the user authentication is successful. So now we're going to go down into the mode configuration options. It says for this particular tunnel group, which is test group and the username Cisco, the hardware client connection is rejected because network extension mode is not allowed for this group. So specifically, it has to do with the fact now that the hardware client, which is router 3, is requesting the network extension mode, and the ASA does not automatically allow this. If we look at the show run all group policy, under the group policy, there's a specific field that says, is network extension mode enabled or disabled? So really, this is only going to be the only functional difference between the ASA as the server versus the iOS as the server when we're using the hardware client, that by default network extension mode is disabled on the ASA. Now, we can quickly fix this if we were to say show run group policy. And for the group policy that we have for this tunnel, which is VPN client policy 1, we simply need to say that network extension mode is enabled. Now, if we were to reinitiate the tunnel from 3, we see we get the request for the extended authentication. it says now the client is up and the network extension mode remote subnets are 172.16.34.0/24. If we were to now go to router 4, which is behind the client side, and send traffic behind the server side, so on router 4, if we telnet to router 6, again, the functional difference here is going to be that if we look at the show users, we see the connection is now coming from their real internal address, and we do not have a port address translation occurring on the client. So in the client mode of iOS, there's nothing different from the ASA as the server. When we are running in network extension mode, we need to account for this, that in the group policy, this is denied by default. Where either we could change it in the group policy that is applied to that individual tunnel group, or we could apply this to the default group policy, which means that it would be inherited by all other group policies and then in turn by all other tunnel groups.